Hi, I'm Dr. Kat Magnone. I am currently an adjunct chemistry instructor at Cincinnati State. My dissertation research studied high school students learning about sodium chloride dissolution using molecular level animations. One of the things that I'm most proud of in my career is actually just graduating with my PhD, considering what it took for me to get there. It actually took me 2 attempts to get my PhD. In the 5th year of my first program, I ended up quitting and then starting over a year later in a new city, a new state, a new discipline. So just being able to succeed at the end of that was very satisfying. So when I was at my second institution trying for my PhD, I failed my qualifying exams on the first attempt. And how that worked at my university is that you took a bunch of written cumulative exams, and then once you made it through that, you had to do what we called an original research proposal, and it had to have nothing to do with your dissertation research. And so you write an abstract for it, and then a month or 2 later, you do a defense on that written research proposal. And for me, after I got through the cumulative exams and submitted the abstract for what I thought was a really cool proposal, my committee sent it back and said that it wasn't original enough. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a shot to the heart. I already had really low self-esteem, but I figured I don't have to start from scratch. If it's not original enough, then I can just make some tweaks to make it more original, make it better. And they did end up accepting it on the second pass. But then when I got to the defense part, after I'd given my written proposal and they'd had a week or so to review it, I gave the presentation, I answered all their questions, and then they came back after deliberation and told me that I failed. And I would get one more chance after that failure, and that was not abnormal. At my institution, the Chemistry Education Research Division was notoriously one of the most difficult qualifying exams, and a lot of people tended to fail on their first attempts. So since very few people passed on the first try, I knew I wasn't alone in having to go for a second attempt, but I was really, really devastated because, this is my second pass at grad school. I've been doing research for so long at that point that, I wasn't new to this. It felt like I should know how grad school was supposed to work. And it felt like really deeply personal in the sense that it made me question whether, did I leave the first PhD program because I'm actually just not cut out for grad school, and not necessarily because the situation I was in at that time was a bad situation to be in. So I really internalized that failure. It really wrecked my self-esteem, and even professionally, I still struggle with proposing new research ideas. I always fear that it's not going to be good enough or not original enough, and that's just not going to be a good thing. So even though I had a month to revise my proposal and redo the qualifying exam, and I did ultimately pass on the second attempt, that failure on the first attempt really stuck with me, and I struggled with the remainder of my research and with my mentoring responsibilities for a long time because I kept doubting myself. One thing that was very helpful is that once I kind of broke out of that isolationist, I'm not going to talk to anybody mood, talking to other people who'd been in similar situations, especially because, like I mentioned, the chemistry education exam is notoriously the hardest one. So I did reach out to the other chem ed grad students, telling them, look, I failed, but, you've had this experience as well. What do I do now? How do I move forward? How can I improve going into the next attempt? And for me, there was a lot of benefit to talking to other people who had similar experiences. Just knowing, that failure is a part of life, not just a part of grad school. But because what we're doing in grad school is incredibly difficult, even with incredibly easy things, there's going to be times when you fail. And one of my colleagues actually put me onto this framework of productive failure. And it's normally used in the sense of like in the classroom, you can have productive failure. But it's basically, in a nutshell, says that you can learn just as much, if not more, from circumstances where you have a failure rather than just circumstances where you're succeeding at every single step of the way. So going into my second attempt, I also recognized that if I wanted to do well, I needed to not just improve like my understanding of the science, but I also needed to take care of my physical and mental well-being. I needed to be, well fed, well hydrated. I needed to be rested. I actually did need to socialize with humans and not just self-isolate. I needed, to take care of myself, to be the best version that I could be going into that second attempt. One of the ways that this failure changed me is that I think I'm much more reflective now about the experiences that I have. So both in regards to what went wrong, but also what went right. So I try to practice a lot more self-reflection for most tasks, regardless of how big or small or successful or unsuccessful the task is. I'll sit down and think at the end of it, okay, what went well? What went wrong? How can I improve? What went well enough that I want to carry it forward to future endeavors? And I think it's really important to do that with pretty much all of your tasks, because if you want to be good at something like self-reflection, you can't just practice it when you're in a hyper emotional state. You're not going to get better at doing something when your brain is focused on the emotions of the moment. So you have to practice it for the small things and for the things that were successful too. The most important thing is to ask for advice from everyone that you can ask for help from. I ask for advice from my faculty members, my committee chair, my PI, but also from other grad students, current grad students, former grad students, chem ed grad students, the analytical, physical, inorganic chemistry grad students, just anyone that you can ask for advice. Ask them for advice. But then also, when you encounter challenges and failures in grad school, I would say it's very important to learn to distinguish between failure at a task and failure as a person, because most of the time when you fail at a task, it's easy to think that you failed as a person. But in most cases, in fact, in probably all cases, I don't think that's true. My personal mantra on the subject is that what people think of as failure is only really a failure if you failed to learn a lesson from the experience. Thanks for watching Fail-Safe Science. I'm Kat, and just remember, grad school is hard, but you can find community here. Don't forget to be awesome.